Hello and welcome to the 14th episode of the Full Bottle Podcast. I'm here in Mildura at the Citrus Australia office, and joining me from Melbourne today is my new co-host Matt Jones. Welcome, Matt.
Well, thanks very much, Gabby. I'm a first-time podcaster but a long-time Full Bottle listener, so it's a pleasure to be here today.
Thanks, Matt. Well, Matt's just joined the Citrus Australia team, taking over communications at Citrus Australia with a lot of knowledge and enthusiasm.
Yeah, I'm certainly keen to get going, Gabby. From the outset, I'll apologise to listeners. I don't have the same beautiful dulcet tones as Stephen Cook, but I'm really looking forward to engaging with growers and stakeholders from across the citrus supply chain and building my knowledge base of the sector.
Yeah, I don't know how we're going to fix that. I don't know how you make your voice sound deeper. I've done some Googling, and a lot of them just said, suck it up, just get used to the sound of your own voice, which I'm not comfortable with doing, are you?
Oh, time will tell, Gab, time will tell.
We're going to take some time to get to know the man who'll be calling you for stories, chasing information, and liaisoning with industry. But before we get into this episode, I have to apologise to our listeners.
What are you apologising for, Gab?
This is going to be a weird episode because there have been a lot of events going on in the horticultural industry this month.
Well, that's true. Gabby, you and I today are going to take some time to reflect on Hort Connections, Australia and New Zealand's premier horticulture conference and trade show, which was held in Adelaide earlier this month.
Yes, and I also ventured across the river to help celebrate 75 years of research at the New South Wales DPI Dareton Research Site, where I got to speak to Jenny McLeod. She's one of the first women to work at the site and spent many years supporting research for industry.
We'll also get to hear from Warren Davies, aka the Unbreakable Farmer, who held a session at the Farm Resilience Program workshop.
Warren talks about being an advocate in the mental health space. We don't talk about anything too grilling, but if you're having a rough day, feel free to skip through that interview.
And if you do require some support, there will be some resources in the podcast description below.
So let's get to know our new co-host. Matt, tell us about yourself and give us a rundown of your role at Citrus Australia.
Yeah, Gabby, I'm a journalist by trade. I've spent the past 10 years with Fruitnet Media International, producing content for Asia Fruit and Produce Plus magazines, which some of our listeners might be familiar with. And as the communications manager at Citrus Australia, I'll be overseeing all of the organisation's communication outputs. So everything from social media through to Australia Citrus News and this podcast. As part of this work, I'll be reaching out to our growers and associate members, along with industry partners, researchers and the global citrus community for the latest news and developments within this sector.
And how did you end up in the horticultural industry? Because this is always really interesting for me to hear someone who's always been in the sort of agricultural background, how people, who aren't from potentially that background come into it and stay in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started as a cadet journalist down in Tasmania, where I was working predominantly on the sports department of a daily newspaper down there, which for a sports nut like me was a bit of a dream job. But after a couple of years down there, the lure of the big smoke back in Melbourne drew me in. And sure enough, the first job I could get was with a agriculture publication, Fruitnet Media, and been there ever since. So 10 years on, and I absolutely love the industry. It's just so many characters, so many interesting pieces of news, developments, people from all walks of life, a lot of travel. It really is just a vibrant and exciting space.
Is there any career highlights, or is there a story that just stuck with you that you think, God, I'm proud of that, or that was just such an interesting thing to learn about?
Yeah, I got to interview Barry Hall, a very famous Aussie rules footballer, when he first retired. So that was pretty cool. He was nicknamed Big Bad Barry, so I didn't ask him too many curly questions. And looking back at my time probably at Fruitnet, it's hard to identify one, but I think what I'm really proud of was the chance to be an editor of the magazine Produce Plus for the last sort of 5 years of my time there, building my network base that predominantly focused on the Australia-New Zealand market. So within this area, that was really, really cool.
Yeah, it sounds like it's really cool. Glad to have you here with Citrus Australia, and making all those other horticultural industries really jealous at the moment. So if I'm running into you on the weekend or after work hours, where would I find you? What would you most likely be doing?
You might find me running, Gabby, quite literally. My waistline probably doesn't show it at the moment, but I do love my exercise. I find it's a really, really cool way to just de-stress after a long day. And when I'm not doing that, I'm probably watching my beloved St Kilda Saints or enjoying a coffee with my wife and our little border collie, Toby, at one of the many great cafes we have down here in Melbourne.
I don't follow football at all, but I have a feeling I'm not meant to be happy that you go for the Saints. I think like a team that everyone generally agrees isn't that good?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of people have sympathy for the Saints. We're tortured souls, us supporters. We're one premiership in 100 and something years of existence.
Ooh.
So, yeah, you can feel sorry for me, but don't hate me.
Yeah, well, at least we know you're committed, like
yeah,
you're devoted.
I'd like to see things through, so if nothing else, that says a little bit about me.
And if I'm going to Melbourne, which coffee shop should I be going to? Which is the best?
Ooh, yeah, okay. So I live in what you might call the coffee belt. I'm in inner city Melbourne here in Abbotsford, and we have a beautiful little place down the road called Raff's Galley, run by a little Greek family, and they just do the most amazing fresh brew. We've also got a place called South of Johnson just down the road as well, which does a nice brekkie if that's your way, nice smashed avo on toast. And then from there, that's probably the two I'd recommend, Gabby. They're the two that we frequent the most. So the other great thing about where we live is there's a lot of nice little bars and pubs. So at the other end of the day, you've always got an option as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into Hawk Connections. This was my first year going to Hawk Connections. And I was a little bit, overwhelmed. I wasn't sure what to expect, was incredibly unprepared. But I probably did a lot of steps, actually, because I just walked around and around and around and around. And if you asked me what I did that day, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I don't know how the time passed.
That's half the skill of it, I think, Gab, is just make yourself look busy.
Yeah. Almost had a broom out, was sweeping. So how would you describe Hawk Connections to someone who's never been before?
Yeah, it's a little bit like the Royal Melbourne Show, I think, Gabby, only for the fresh produce industry, obviously. At the trade show, there's companies showcasing everything, and I literally mean everything and anything, from heavy machinery to packaging and even fresh pumpkin. The speaker program there addresses topics and trends across the whole supply chain, and there's always plenty of networking opportunities to get to know your new and existing customers that little bit better.
And you were working at Hawk Connections this year. What were you doing?
I was. It was actually my final week as editor of Produce Plus magazine, and we had the Marketer of the Year award to present there. This is one of the premier awards presented at the Hawk Connections Gala dinner on the last night of the trade show. And this year it was actually won by Belinda Van Shake of Hort Innovation for the Australian Mangoes campaign. If you get a chance, I highly recommend you head over to the Produce Plus website and read about Belinda's winning entry. It's a great example of what can be achieved when a R&D levy funded marketing campaign works well.
Yeah, I did watch the nominations and I did watch you present, and I did listen to the presentations where they showed everyone what their marketing campaigns did, and it was pretty amazing. There was 3 nominations, wasn't there? 2 of them in mangoes and 1 of them in kiwi.
That's correct. We had Red Rich Fruits, and Mambaloo also put a mango entry in, and Zespri International, who are the big kiwi fruit marketers over in New Zealand. An incredibly hard decision to make from the judges' point of view. 3 very well delivered and executed plans, marketing plans, campaigns, and really separating Belinda as the winner was a tough task, but all credit to her. Yeah, hopefully even next year the citrus marketing fund, we can get an entry in there.
Yeah, it'd be really cool. Were there any sessions or exhibits that stood out to you or you enjoyed the most?
Yeah, probably on the trade show floor, Gabby, I think 2 innovations really caught my eye. The first was the EcoMark natural branding system from Result Group. It essentially uses laser technology to engrave a label or a barcode or a QR code onto a piece of fruit or a vegetable. There's actually no harm to the fruit. It's just like a natural tattoo marked into the product. And I think the best thing is that the Result Group is thinking about bringing it to the citrus sector. So watch this space.
I was talking to that stall and how it would work on citrus and how they're actually looking into it and stuff like that. It'd be really cool to get some of that technology in. If anyone's interested in it, it's really, I've got pictures of it. It was probably a highlight for me too.
Yeah, it's just amazing what technology can do these days, isn't it? I also saw a tearless onion on the BASF stand. Basically, it's an onion that's been bred to prevent your eyes watering when you cut it. And I don't know about you, Gab, but I'm occasionally in the kitchen and my wife finds me and she thinks I've had an emotional long day and I've just actually been cutting onions.
Sometimes I'm like, bring on the tears. Like, I need a little cry right now.
Yeah, well, I have those days as well.
That's pretty cool. I didn't see that. I did see the ice cream.
Oh, yeah.
It was, I think, the cauliflower and gingerbread.
Yeah. Some of the flavours were a little bit out there, weren't they? But I think that was on the Hort Innovation stand, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. So what overall value do you think there is to have these events and for people to attend them in the industry?
Yeah, it's a great question, Gabby. I think there's really no substitute for that one-on-one interaction you get at events like this. Getting to see and hear things firsthand, personally, nothing beats that. Catching up with old friends and making new ones along the way, it's always a good fun week.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. And that's actually where Matt and I met for the first time. So it's always going to be special to me. And I love heading up to Adelaide. It's just a beautiful place, a beautiful city, lots of bars, lots of clubs. Clubs, cafes.
I used to stay out of those, Gabby, I'm pleased to say.
I really wanted to get everyone in the wool shed and onto the bull in there.
Oh, God.
That would have made some memories.
Imagine that?
Yeah. Well, that's enough from Matt. Let's hear from our special guest now, starting with Jenny. And this is Jenny's first podcast, by the way. I'm here at the New South Wales DPI 75th Open Day celebration. They've been open for 75 years. And I've got an ex-employee.
I started work here in 1957 on the 14th of October. I was 18 years old. I was about 2 months off turning 19. And I worked in the office. I was the first female office assistant appointed. And we were in that little brick building across from where we're talking now. And I was the only female on the property. We had 2 farm hands, a manager, a fruit officer on the station and 4 extension officers, fruit inspector, agronomist in the other building. So it was a bit of a change from working in Mildura in a solicitor's office to coming over here and being the only female and being away from the town and not walking out on the street and seeing other people. But it ended up being the most delightful part of my life.
Do you have any specific memory in your time working here or an achievement?
Well, I only pushed keys on a typewriter and answered phones. Well, one interesting thing, we had the boys, as I call them, the men rigged up a telephone system from the office up here on the hill to the farm staff a little bit, not that far away, but sometimes it was quicker. If the thing worked, you could get a message down there. And we had these old telephones that were used, and the boys put wiring, I don't know what they did, but it wasn't as successful as we'd hoped. But it was a nice experiment, and everybody seemed to get on pretty well together, and we were all out one time, we were all helping plant the stock and variety trial, which is no longer here. And I found it delightful to wander through the arboretum, which was at the back of the office, tasting the different citrus that were there. Some were a bit sour and some were quite nice. And it was just nice because I liked being amongst horticulture because I come from a farming background. So sheep and horticulture was sort of a main interest, a family interest too.
And how does it feel like being here today? Obviously, there's all the buildings have electricity, as I've just learnt. They didn't have electricity for a long time.
We did have electricity when I started here. When my father got his fruit block out on the 3rd allocation of the soldier settlement, we lived for, I'm not sure how long, but we didn't have power. We had kerosene lamps and tilling lanterns, which were quite bright. And then it was an experience to see that I didn't know a telephone pole's so deep into the ground as well as how far up it sticks out. So can't imagine the size trees they come from. But yes, that was an interesting experiment because Dad pioneered the block, which had to be cleared of balar trees. And then coming up here, it was interesting learning about how they produce a citrus tree.
Yeah.
And there was a demonstrated stone fruit block, a demonstration block of stone fruit along the highway there. And we had a nursery. The farm staff and the extension staff or the fruit officer here, they produced trees here. It was just a nice...
Yeah.
Just nice.
Yeah. And how does it feel to be here today in this space? And it's changed a lot and you were a part of it. Is it special?
It's very special day today, yes. But I come out regularly and see everybody. It's dropped off in latter years, but I forget. I must have been retired nearly 18, 19 years now. And because this was such a large part of my life, they're family out here too. And it's lovely to see how big it's grown and what they're doing and to learn and hear about it. It's just good.
And apparently you make some amazing cakes and you bring them over, Stephen was saying.
Oh, I have been known to make some little cakes, yeah.
Well, you'll have to leave us a recipe. Thank you so much for talking to me and our listeners, and I hope you enjoyed the event and today. And yeah, maybe we'll drop by and say hello ourselves.
Thank you, Gabby.
No, thank you. I'm here at the New South Wales Dareton Research Centre station, and I'm here with Warren, the Unbreakable Farmer, and he's just given a speech at Business Resilience. Warren, can you give us an overview of what you just spoke about?
Yeah, I talked about the importance of mental health and well-being in the agricultural space, I suppose, and how to how that leads on to building more resilience in your business and in your life. And I do that by sharing my own story, my own journey in agriculture. I was a dairy farmer all my life, so share my own lived experience.
And I really enjoyed your presentation and the message that you were sending out, and the way you delivered that message as well is really quality. So what's your background? Because you grew up in the city, your family moved to a regional place and you basically fell in love with it from what I can tell, and then you started operating your own farm.
Yeah. So I was born and bred in Melbourne, and Mum and Dad were small business owners, and then Dad decided, or he always harboured a dream of being a dairy farmer, and we moved to the Goulburn Valley when I was 15, and I fell in love with farming. I was already been, I suppose, indoctrinated by my mum's uncle was a dairy farmer, and we had friends that were dairy farmers, but I always loved farming. But moving to the country was fantastic, and fell in love with that, and then chose that as a career path, and learnt off one of the best farmers in the district, and learnt my craft, and ended up choosing that as a career.
You're basically an advocate in the health and wellbeing section in agriculture and horticulture, a broad space. So you had in your presentation about closed questions. So when we're checking in on our mates or family and seeing if they're okay, and asking, hey, are you okay? Like, that's a closed sort of question. They can either nod their head and say yes or no. It needs to be a bit more, a bit more open communication.
Yep. So I'm definitely an advocate in the space because by my own journey and my own struggles. So I learned a lot. I've learned a lot along the way, and some of those things that I share in my presentation, like how to start that conversation with people. And one of those things, there's two things that probably hinder conversations with people, and ask them if they're okay. One of them's that question, are you okay? And it's really, like, it's a good icebreaker, but it is a closed question. It'll get a yes or a no answer. And if you're really concerned about someone's well-being, well, you need to ask questions that are going to develop into conversation and not just get a yes or a no. Or, as I said in our presentation, like 90% of the blokes that are in any of my presentations, just give a nod of the head, and that's it. That's the end of yeah, I'm okay. Even if they aren't okay, they'll just give a nod of the head. And the other one is about, everyone, when they ask, they get hindered in asking questions or asking people if they're doing okay, is because they think they've got to have the advice and the answers to all the questions, and they don't. Just sitting and listening, just being a friendly ear or just someone there to support someone, that's normally all, as basic as it gets, all you have to do, really.
Yeah. Have you ever done mental health first aid training?
Yes, I have, yes.
How valuable do you find that?
Yeah, that was pretty that was valuable. It just kind of, added to my own experience. I've always been daunted as this mental health advocate and speaker, that I suppose a bit of imposter syndrome, who am I? I'm a dairy farmer. I'm not a psychologist or a social worker, or even though I've got, I've done, my mental health first aid and done some suicide prevention training, and I've done particularly after doing work in the bushfires, I've done some psychological first aid and trauma informed care and all that sort of stuff, but I'm not a professional as such, and I've always had that the imposter syndrome of who am I to there. But lived experience is really important, but then you couple that with a little bit of experience, like a little bit of training as well, and it's really really empowering. But everyone, like physical first aid, everyone should do mental health first aid, I think. We Citrus Australia did it. Most of our team did it a couple of years ago. It was just really valuable because, sometimes you get things thrown on you and you just want to be able to manage that for yourself. Yeah.
Not take it on board, but...
That's the important bit, managing it for yourself. But I'm also a great believer, like regardless of training or whatever, if it feels right in your heart and it feels right in your gut, you can never go too far wrong, and you can't cause too much harm if that's your intention and your approach.
Yeah. And you talked a little bit about how being in sort of a healthy mindset, healthy well-being and looking after that part of yourself makes you a little bit more resilient when you're facing tough situations on the farm. So if that's like drought or farm or, how you cut the water pipe accidentally, you know.
I think that's really important. Like, investing time into yourself and treating yourself as the number one asset on your farm is really important to, creating that resilient business model. Because if I talk about my unbreakable wheel of well-being and the spokes of your wheel, well, if your emotional and mental health isn't too good, well, your resilience model is going to fall apart pretty quickly.
Is there anything or advice or key messages from your presentation today that you would like to give our listeners?
I think those three last messages are really important. Communication's key. We've really got to communicate with the people around us, make sure that we're communicating with our friends, our family, our support network and our industry, whatever industry you're in. That's really important. Staying connected to those people and to that support network is really important as well. And also the importance of staying connected with shared wisdom, because we're all travelling those journeys. Along the way, we've all faced the similar challenges, but we've perceived them differently, picked up different bits of wisdom that we need to share with each other. And thirdly, seek help. Make sure that you're reaching out and sticking your hand up. Sticking your hand up and asking for help is actually a sign of strength and not a sign of weakness. So if you are struggling or you need a hand or a little bit of support, don't feel too proud to stick your hand up and ask for it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast, and have a good travel home.
Thank you very much.
Wherever you're going.
It's heading home this afternoon, which will be good. It's been a couple of hectic weeks, so a bit of time on the road, so it'll be good to be home tonight. And
Are you driving?
Yep.
How far is that?
I think it's about 5 hours from here. So
you're not going home tonight, though.
Yeah, I'll travel, but I'll stop a little bit on.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if there's anywhere to stop really between, is there?
Yeah, there's a car. It's comfortable if you're tired.
Oh, you poor thing. All right, well, travel safe, please.
Thanks, Gabby. Cheers.
No worries. Bye.
Well, Gabby, sadly, we've reached the end of another podcast. Today, we've heard a lot about events taking place around the country. And before we let our listeners go, it might be a good opportunity to mention one of our own. The Australian Citrus Congress is happening on 6th and 7th of March 2024. It will be our first ever Citrus Congress, bringing together the Citrus Technical Forum and Market Outlook Forum under the same roof.
We were really happy with our tech forum in 2022. So we're taking it back to the beautiful Sunshine Coast at the Novotel Sunshine Coast Resort for all the good vibes and the good weather.
Yeah, God, we can't wait for that. Melbourne winter at the moment is definitely arrived. The format for the event, the annual general meeting and members event will be held on the 5th of March with the Congress speaker program and exhibition following on the 6th and 7th of March. More details will follow over the coming weeks, and we'll be sure to let you know when tickets, stand space and partnerships become available.
For now, mark it on your calendars. If you like to be organised, maybe you want to book your flight. I know Mildura has Bonza now, so that's opened a few doors. Yeah. If you know someone notable in the industry, by the way, who you think deserves recognition for all their contributions to the industry or some of the work they're doing, contact our office and ask about nominations for our industry awards night. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Thank you to our special guests for taking the time and having a chat with us, including Matt for sharing the co-hosting duties with me. Thank you, Matt.
The pleasure's all mine, Gabby. Thanks very much for having me.
And thanks everyone for tuning in.
Make sure you hit subscribe or follow us on the podcast app and give it a share on social media.
If you're listening and thinking, I didn't like this episode, then it's your own fault because you can leave feedback in the link on the podcast description. We're always looking for feedback and always want to know what you want to know.
Well, that's a worry. Thanks all for listening.
Bye.